Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the hottest topics currently dividing our country and we debate them with our diverse group of hosts. So sit back and strap in as for the next 2 hours we leave no story undebated and no politician will be spared. It's the American Idiots Podcast live on Podcast Network 49 and it begins right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Money Mike, and I'm welcoming you in here to the American Idiot Show. I am, of course, 1/3 of our regularly scheduled hosts here on the American Idiot Show. But before I bring on my other host, I, of course, want to let you know to go ahead and hit the like. If you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and subscribe to or give our page a like. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and give the video a like, share it, subscribe to our YouTube. If you're listening to us on audio only, of course, we want you to go ahead and leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. That way, you don't miss an episode. If you enjoy hearing us sit here and banter back and forth about these topics dividing our country, but without further ado, I'll go ahead and bring on the second member of our panel here, making his return back to the American Idiots after a week off, the Manny Hispanic. Manny, how you doing this week?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's been good. Trying to stay warm. We've been lighting up the fireplace for a couple of nights now. So, yeah, things been going really good, man.
Heck yeah. It was actually pretty warm out there today. I was actually rather surprised. I think it got into the 60s today, which was rather nice. I'm still waiting for Snowmageddon because Lord knows it's bound to happen, whether, you know, the severity of the Snowmageddon is probably, you know, up for question, but definitely it's bound that we're going to get some sort of snow this year.
And if it's snow, I can handle that. That'd be fine. It's like in 2000 when it was all ice. That sucked.
Yeah, that was rough. Of course, you can see noticeable by his absence is our third member. He is actually working tonight, so he should be in and out. But we wanted to get started on time, and that we will. And we got a heck of a topic starting us off here, talking about the voting rights showdown. And we actually will start off with a video here from ABC News on this. So let's get it started.
Joining me now to respond to that is Senator Chris Coons, a close ally of President Biden. Good morning, Senator. You know, those voters in Texas can resubmit the ballot applications, but you heard the election officials saying this is a canary in the coal mine for the midterms. How concerned are you?
I'm gravely concerned, Martha. We're seeing laws like SB 1 in Texas passed in a dozen states across the country that are clearly designed to accomplish voter suppression. There are legitimate concerns about making sure there isn't widespread voter fraud. There isn't. We've investigated it repeatedly in the Congress. And under that veil, that somehow requiring people to remember exactly what form of ID they used to register years ago, mail-in ballot requests can be invalidated, as your reporting just showed in Harris County, Texas. I'm concerned that similar tricks and moves are being used at the local level to suppress the vote and to make it harder for working people, for seniors, for those who are medically vulnerable during a pandemic to vote.
You know, neither Senator Kyrsten Sinema nor Senator Joe Manchin supported changing the Senate filibuster rules to get voting rights passed nationally. Now the Arizona Democratic Party has censured Senator Sinema over this. Is that really appropriate? Is that helpful?
Well, Martha, what I hope your viewers get about what happened this last week in the Senate is that all 50 Democrats, including Senators Manchin and Sinema, voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act and for the Freedom to Vote Act, which would tackle this problem of voter suppression and voter subversion around the country, and none of the 50 Republicans in the Senate joined us. There are frustrations, of course, in the Democratic Party across the country, but the right to vote is foundational. It's not just foundational to the Democratic Party. It's one of the foundations of our democracy. We're going to keep trying. We're going to keep working at it. This was an important fight for us to show that sharp contrast between Democrats and Republicans this last week on the floor of the Senate. But more importantly, we need to keep working to make sure that every American can vote and vote safely and vote securely.
Have you really seen evidence of suppression? As I said, in Harris County, for instance, they can resubmit that application.
Absolutely. We've seen abundant evidence that there are laws being passed that roll back things like ballot drop boxes, drive-through voting, 24-hour early voting, restricting access to the ballot box, particularly for those who in an ongoing pandemic are medically vulnerable, those who are essential workers. We made significant progress in making it easier for folks to vote in the pandemic in 2020. Why would we be rolling that back in a dozen states when the pandemic isn't over? And why would we be erecting new barriers for people to be able to vote? We've seen cleverly crafted laws that will do things like automatically remove people from the voting rolls or make it harder for them to apply for mail-in ballots that I believe are designed to suppress the vote.
And Senator Coons, I want to turn to President Biden. Democrats have been united against former President Trump's efforts to cast doubt on the last election. But in his press conference, President Biden cast some doubt of his own about the next one. Let's listen.
All depends on whether or not we're able to make the case to the American people that some of this is being set up to try to alter the outcome of the election.
He tried to walk that back, but was the damage done?
Well, Martha, what you're hearing there is President Biden's passionate commitment to making sure that we are pushing back on voter suppression and that we secure access to the ballot for as many Americans as is possible. That's something I'm also passionately committed to. And we need to make it clear to the American people what's at stake here and why we're fighting so hard to secure the right to vote.
And Senator Coons, you are a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. I want to turn to Russia and Ukraine. The State Department is...
Okay, we're pretty much done there with that topic, or with that topic as far as the video goes. And actually, that did end up, I didn't catch that the first time, but it did end up
playing that second part.
Yeah, negating the need for the second video. But I want to start off here with the senator. She was talking with the gentleman, and he says that there is widespread voter suppression. Manny, voter suppression is like the new buzzword. It's the Democrats' buzzword, like voter fraud was for the Republicans in 2020. It's this buzzword, but is it really there? And she even hinted at it. She was like, so the example you just used, all they have to do is resubmit the application, and it'll work the second time around. Is that voter suppression? I'll start there. Like,
no, it's not. I mean, and that's what I've written down. It's like, how are they suppressing these votes? It's not that they're, I mean, okay, you can't vote on Sunday now, where before you could have. That just means you've got to go a different day than Sunday and vote. They're not stopping people from voting. They're just like terminating a day or two. They've terminated some ballot boxes. That doesn't mean you can't find a ballot box. Everybody's still going to get their vote.
Well, and I completely agree. Voting on the weekends, here's my deal. We already have federally backed time off that you have to go vote. An employer has to give you the time to go vote. And it's not the Republican Party's fault that a lot of these people wait until the last second. They procrastinate and wait to go vote until voting day.
Americans don't do that.
Do what?
Americans don't do that.
No, never. Procrastination? No.
That's a made-up word.
But the deal is with this, it literally makes no sense to me how this is such a big deal. And obviously, even you saw there on the title of the video that that they failed in their voting rights legislation to pass, because even Democrats are like, whoa, we have much bigger fish to fry. But there's another thing I really want to hit on that I don't think anybody else is talking about. The midterm elections are 9 months away from now, roughly.
Is it that long?
And the Democrats would have you believe for the past year that they've got this COVID pandemic under control, and that with the vaccine that we can get back to a normal life and so on and so forth. But if you notice, he kept hammering home the reason for these new, measures to make sure people are safe is because of COVID. So you can't have it both ways, in my opinion.
Right.
You can't say we need these extra measures for COVID, but we have COVID under control.
We've got COVID under control. Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. It's Democrats talking out of both sides of their mouth, and it's really frustrating. They talk about the censure there, and the things that are happening in the Senate right now is absolutely unacceptable. But the most unacceptable thing, in his first solo press conference in over a year, and mind you, this guy has only been president for a year, his first press conference as president of the United States, or his second solo press conference as president of the United States, he gets up there and says that the 2022 election may not be a legitimate election should he not get his way. We talked on this show about how dangerous it was that President Trump said these things.
Right.
Why are we not doing the same for President Biden in the mainstream media? Obviously, I'm bringing it up here.
Because the mainstream media has always backed the Democratic people.
I just literally don't understand how, and again, we bashed Donald Trump for the same thing 365 days ago. Even you were like, man, this is getting a little ridiculous, Donald, because it was. But now to sit there and a year later to say that, number one, they didn't even do justice to how disheveled Joe Biden was in answering that question. You got to see the other video I was going to play where he starts out talking about 2020, and the reporter had to talk him.
Remind him that we're talking about 2022. We're talking about the future, not the past.
Exactly. And then he just basically keeps going like, well, we're talking about Donald Trump if he would have been successful in getting all these votes thrown out. Like, okay.
But like Joe Biden said, he will force it.
Again, like, here's the thing, Joe, obviously we had enough law in this country to suppress what Donald Trump was trying to do, which was throwing the votes out, according to Joe. Obviously, the voting laws we currently have in place did not allow that. Why do we need stricter voting laws, Joe? What are you gaining from this besides exactly what Republicans are saying, and you're trying to gain an advantage? Which I understand. It's a game, but that's what I'm looking at here, Manny, is they're trying everything.
But that's the problem, Mike. The problem is that they treat it like a game, and it was never meant to be a game. It was supposed to be the backbone of this country.
Very true.
Everything was supposed to hinge on the Constitution of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The way the government was set up was supposed to support the Constitution of the United States.
Which, I mean, again, here's another thing that I want to look at before we move on. Why is the federal government, when the Constitution sets up 50 states and allows them to have their own governing bodies and their own laws, which don't supersede federal laws, but still they have their own laws, Why is the federal government trying to overreach into state rights, state voting laws, and change them? Honestly, Washington, D.C., whether I agree with Texas voting law or not, Washington, D.C. has no business debating this. Whether you agree
It's all
with
about
it,
control.
it is. It absolutely is. And this is exactly what, I'm going to go back to Reagan. This is exactly what Reagan warned about. These are the things that are problems. This is where Republicans do have it right, 100% in my opinion. These states things need to remain at the state level. These federal things need to remain at the federal level. If you don't like Texas voting laws, guess what? Move out of Texas.
Right.
It's not hard. It's not hard. If it is that oppressive and that bad for you, move. You don't want to be there anyway. Let's be honest here. If a state is treating you that poorly, then you don't want to be there anyway. Move to California. Move to Colorado. Let's be honest. Every
But
state
this is
but
the new
Texas
fad,
is
Mike.
treating you. Go ahead.
This is the new fad. To convert everything to what you want. To convert everything to what I want.
Well, and essentially what it is everybody, the federal government is wanting to play on a national election cycle, which the national election, 50 states, always does favor Democrats. Let's be honest here. They tend to favor Democrats. State elections tend to favor Republicans. Democrats are trying to, again, play the game, which I agree. It does happen on both sides, and it needs to stop. This shouldn't be about what each side thinks is going to be more beneficial to them as much as it should be about, okay, constitutionally, how do we have a fair election? And again, that's the problem we're having. We're having the federal government, people that are not even elected in the state of Texas. The only people in Washington, D.C. right now that should be talking about SB 1 are Ted Cruz, and God knows I don't know their other senators, but Ted Cruz is one of them. That's all.
Right.
Washington, D.C. may be able to say, you know what, I don't agree with that, but they shouldn't have any sort of ability to go back and say, well, SB 1 can't take effect. No, that's not how this works. You are stepping on the not the sovereignty, but you're stepping on Texas's ability to govern their own people. And that's unconstitutional in and of its own right, unless I'm mistaken on how the Constitution reads.
No, I think you're right.
Like, if Texas, if the Senate decided to just try to supersede Texas voting law, Texas could go to the Supreme Court and win, correct? I mean, again, assuming.
Right.
Then, again, we're chasing our tail over nothing. You're doing nothing to move the ball forward. Right now, we don't need to be chasing our tail, running around in circles. Right now, we need to worry about this economy. We need to worry about Russia and Ukraine. We need to worry about China. We need to worry about these incoming threats to our way of life. Because God knows we can think a 50-year strategy down the line, but unless we take care of ourselves right now, we're not making it 50 years down the line. You have to take care of what's happening now first, and then you have to think towards the future.
Right. And you have to let the states rule their own state.
Absolutely.
When the federal government starts trying to get into what's going on state level and they're not paying attention to what's going on at the federal level or even what's going on around the world, that's when we have stuff like, Japan sneaking in and bombing us, and Saudi Arabia sneaking in and using planes to bring down buildings.
It's just, I'll be honest with you. We're talking about possibilities of attacks. That's what happens when you have a 9/11. This is the exact situation as to how 9/11 basically happened. We got too comfortable. We weren't paying attention to what was happening abroad, and we need to make sure that we don't allow that to happen again. We always talk about this never forget mentality. Right now, we're forgetting. Right now, we are doomed to repeat history because we didn't learn from the mistakes of our past, and we're thinking just about what we can do and how we innovate. Yes, innovation is great in this country, but again, you can't make something better 50 years down the line if there is no United States 50 years down the line. You can't do it, and there needs to be a complete strategy change. And I mean, it starts honestly at this point with a change in leadership in 2024. It's absolutely unacceptable.
I wouldn't mind a change of leadership across the board. I mean,
absolutely
we have senators and we have House representatives and we have all kinds of politicians that have been in service, quote unquote, to the United States people for far too long. There are a lot of people that need to be upended and more people brought in.
What happened?
And we need to seriously figure out how to get limitations on how long people can serve.
Absolutely agree. What happened to one of the key selling points people used to always use was, I will reach across the aisle and I will make deals. There's no deal makers in Washington anymore.
Not anymore.
Willing to negotiate because people want to draw the line in the sand. They want to put on their jersey, and nobody wants to give up anything. And you're right. It needs to be a change in leadership across the board. Mitch McConnell needs to go. Nancy Pelosi needs to go. While we're at it, honestly, she hasn't had a very long run, but AOC needs to go. AOC is way too radical to be anywhere. Honestly, here's the thing.
She is radical, but she is new.
This is true.
If people have, was she appointed or voted in?
She was voted in.
Okay. If people have voted her in and have continued to keep her in, with as little time as she's been there, I'm saying let her stay. Even though I don't agree with her views, even though I don't agree with how radical she can be, if she has a fan base that is keeping her there for right now, I say let her stay.
Well, here's
because it's not. I'm sorry. There's a piece of fuzz floating. I was grabbing that. It's not about what I believe or don't believe when it comes to her views. There are people that believe her views, but the fact that she is new is the only reason I would say let her stay. Now, Mitch McConnell, you're right. He has been in office far too long.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you the reason why I think AOC needs to go is I was a mix of time in office and inability to compromise. Bernie Sanders, as extreme as what Bernie Sanders is, and Bernie hasn't even, I think Bernie may have been first.
He's kind of laying low, ain't he?
I'd have to look. But Bernie, as extreme as what he is, democratic socialism, he used to be, he was AOC before AOC. But here's the difference between AOC and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders knows when to negotiate. Bernie Sanders knows when it's time to play hardball and when it's time to say, you know what, we've got to accomplish something. I'm going to be the person that's going to be the bigger person, and I'm going to sit at the table and at least listen to the idea. We don't have that in Washington right now with the AOCs, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Mitch McConnells. We definitely don't have it in the White House because they can't even comprehend something to negotiate with. Want to welcome in Matt Hawk. Matt Hawk, I mean, I think you've been listening to us here. It's time for just change in leadership across the board, I believe. I guess Matt Hawk may have had to drop out for a second. He's in a metal building, it looks like. But again, a change in leadership across the board, both sides. And again, like I said this as the Democrat, and I was laughed at. I said this when Joe Biden came in. I'm going to say this again. whatever administration follows Joe Biden. There needs to be a strategic piece of Republicans and Democrats. The big problem we have in this country currently, besides no term limits, is the fact that there is no negotiation. Nobody's willing to negotiate. Everybody wants to dig their heels in the sand. Mad Hawk?
What's up? Sorry, I missed part of that. Apparently, I got bumped out and then I came back in.
What we were saying was that the problem with, the leadership in this country, and the reason why we need this overreaching leadership change, whether it be, a Mitch McConnell going out, a Nancy Pelosi going out, a Joe Biden going out, et cetera, is because, number one, they've been there way the hell too long. And number two, there's no negotiation on either side.
Right.
We have too many people that are too dug into their ways to negotiate.
Absolutely.
We talked about AOC. I think that's AOC's biggest issue right now. I compared her to Bernie Sanders. I said Bernie is extreme, but Bernie knows when to stop, and Bernie knows when to come to the negotiation table. AOC just doesn't stop and just keeps running her mouth. I literally don't understand. But I do want to ask you before we move on, I want to give you a chance to hop in here. What do you think about Joe Biden in his first solo press conference in almost a year, saying that he thinks that the 2022 election may be illegitimate? I compare it to what Donald Trump said this time last year about the 2020 election. Both are equally just as dangerous. I believe.
I would, I unfortunately I missed that press conference, but I did hear about it. This goes back to what I was saying last week when it was me and you and Manny. By the way, welcome back. I hope your tooth is doing good. Real quick.
No, it's gone. They pulled it.
Right? Double going here, but this goes back to what I said last week with, each party says the same thing just about the other party. This is now the Democrats saying, it's going to be an illegitimate election because they're worried. Be right back.
Exactly. That's absolutely what it is. And Matt Hawk, of course, in and out tonight because due to working while he's doing it. That right there is commitment to the show. We appreciate that commitment. If you're working your job and you're still willing to come on here, that's what I call commitment. But let's go ahead and move on to, have we passed the point of herd immunity being possible? And me and Matt Hawk actually talked about this last week, and he said he thinks we have. We have a story here from CBS Los Angeles on this.
Throughout the pandemic, we've heard that if we can just get to herd immunity, we could start to get back to our normal lives.
And that's because enough people would have antibodies from the vaccine or from being infected. But now a new study from USC suggests that probably won't happen. Why is that?
Well, joining us now to talk about the study is Professor Neeraj Sood, the director of the COVID initiative at the USC Schaefer Center. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the study found a large number of people in LA County had the antibodies nearly a year ago, and yet we still had COVID surges from Delta and Omicron. So how does that change the thinking about herd immunity?
So I think what the study shows is that back in April, about 72% of adults in LA County had some sort of protection from COVID, from vaccination, or from prior infection. But despite that, we had these huge Delta and Omicron surges. And basically what that says is that it's going to be very difficult or impossible to hit herd immunity or a state where we won't have future surges. And the reason why we had these surges is because the virus changed. It mutated and it became much more transmissible. So the R0, or the basic reproductive number of the virus, increased. And the second problem was that the virus started infecting those who were vaccinated. So we had many breakthrough infections and also many reinfections among those who had already been infected with COVID before. And if that happens, reaching herd immunity becomes impossible.
I mean, that is disappointing to hear. It's just this uphill battle. So you're essentially saying we just have to accept the fact that we will consistently have these COVID surges then?
So I think it is very likely that we will continue to have these COVID surges, and we need to now start focusing our attention on how can we minimize the harm from these surges. And one way to do that might be to expand access to the new treatments, which can dramatically, like the new Pfizer drug can reduce the risk of hospitalization from COVID by 90%, provided you take the drug within 5 days of symptom onset.
Professor, how do racial disparities play a part in all of this?
So what we found was that in the lower income neighborhoods, the rate of infections was much higher than the higher income neighborhoods. And that probably explains why we've seen, many more deaths from COVID in lower income neighborhoods compared to higher income neighborhoods. We also find that vaccination rates for Blacks and for lower income households have lagged behind vaccination rates for higher income households or whites. So we need to, going forward, address those disparities.
So Neeraj, what do you think the future will look like then?
So I think the future will look like more surges in the future, but hopefully, much less hospitalizations or deaths in the future, because vaccinations and prior infections do protect against deaths and hospitalizations. And as I said, if the new treatments are rolled out, then those new treatments will further reduce hospitalizations and deaths from COVID. So maybe ultimately this might become, like the flu or other endemic diseases.
Yeah, moving toward the endemic. Okay, Professor Sood, thank you so much for joining us in the time today, and we'll talk to you again soon. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you heard it there from the doctor on this USC study that says it is virtually impossible for COVID to become, or for us to develop a herd immunity, so to speak. So a lot of people on the right say, oh, we should just go herd immunity, open up the doors. If people die, they die. So now we know that may not be possible. With that being, go ahead.
The reason they're saying that it may not be possible is because you have group A that gets infected and group B through, say, N are not infected. And by the time you get all the way down to D and E and F, group A has already lost their antibodies, so they can get it again.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have with the trying to hinge everything on the dang vaccine is that if group A gets it and gets the vaccine, okay, it keeps them for an extra 6 months at most. So you're still going to run into that problem.
Absolutely agree. And the doctor said something very interesting to me. He kind of downplayed the vaccine. He didn't talk about the vaccine very much. He didn't say, here's how we get to a point where we're at least, survivable. What he actually started pushing was this new Pfizer drug, where if taken within 5 days of symptom onset, we would be able to see I believe he said a 90% chance that you're not going to be hospitalized with COVID. Me and Matt Hawk talked about this last week. I said, and it almost sounds like that's what he said. We're going to have a COVID flu version. We're going to have a COVID cold version. We're going to have, all these versions where COVID has attached itself to these endemic viruses.
Right. And it sounds like it's going to be an ongoing thing throughout the year, whereas the flu is like it's got a season of 2 or 3 months where it's prevalent.
Right. So here's
sorry to interrupt there. I was just going to point out, really, if you think back on it, I mean, COVID is sort of starting to develop a season that it comes out too. Remember when it originally came out, it was wintertime. Now we have this, the Omicron, variant coming out and seems to be running rapidly everywhere. Again, it's wintertime.
Absolutely agree with that statement. I think we're going to have a season where the COVID cases spike. I don't think we're going to see a time where COVID, where we won't see these spikes. I just basically see that this is something that isn't going away. herd immunity, I don't think is possible. I think what we're going to get to is we now need to divert from trying to eradicate COVID to let's put more money into these Pfizer drugs and drugs that are helping people get through it
with the symptoms.
Yes.
But then why? Because I know I've seen reports about them talking about COVID is going from a pandemic to start switching into an endemic stage. So, which means, again, and I've even read in the reports, most people have been exposed to it. Some are becoming immune to it. So, I mean, they say, herd immunity isn't possible, but then again, it's reaching the endemic stages, and even the new variants that are coming out aren't really as serious as other variants that we've had in the past.
So what he meant, and they actually referred to that at the end of the video, what they mean by that is basically it's not going away. It's just how severe will it be?
Right.
Basically.
And the severity of it really depends on the individual getting it.
Right.
Very true. But I mean, you can say the same thing about the cold and the flu, which
Right.
we still haven't, developed a herd immunity to because it sticks around. So again, the thing I'm looking at is we just need to get off of the whole, we're going to get rid of COVID and COVID's here to stay. COVID's here to stay. We're going to have to, if we catch it, here's your over the counter cold and flu COVID medicine and bingo bango.
Right.
Like, we need to stop with the everybody's going to die. This is the end of the world mentality. And we need to go to, okay, it's not as serious anymore. We
It's the scare tactic.
Pill and we're good. And we'll get into the scare tactics in just a few. But again, continuing to push this vaccine, continuing to do anything but put all of our time now and effort into developing drugs that make it easier to easier to beat whenever you get it is where we need to go. Because again, just like Rich said, just like Matt Hawk said, it is easier, or it's becoming easier to defeat it. They're becoming less and less lethal as we go. Does it suck? Absolutely. If you have asthma, I'm sure it sucks even worse. If you have these pre-existing conditions, I'm sure it sucks ass.
Well,
but at this point, we need to be chilling on it a little bit.
Another funny point that I actually thought was kind of weird, because I have a lot of personal people in my life, I don't want to throw out their names or anything, I know I did last week, but anyways, that are currently dealing with COVID. And in fact, one of those people, this is day 5 now, and their doctor just told them today, they called me up, they said, hey, I'm getting ready to head out. I said, oh, you're feeling better? They said, well, I'm feeling pretty good, but my doctor told me it's been 5 days. As long as I wear a mask, I'm good to go outside now.
Yeah, and I mean, the CDC, now that is the new CDC regulation. I think it's been about 2 weeks now. With a negative test, you can go back after 5 days to life as normal. That's a 10-day decrease. Why are we not celebrating these wins?
Right.
Like, honestly, Democrats look at all of these things with caution, like, it went down. How dare they take it down? Like, why are we not celebrating a win here? Like, obviously, the CDC would not cut down the quarantine time unless they knew that, okay, it's not a big deal anymore.
Right.
Like, I don't understand that. Why aren't we celebrating these wins?
Because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah.
Very true.
That goes back to the fear tactics, which actually goes back to what we were talking about with the first deal. It's about control.
It is. It very much is. I think that again, you look at, not to attack the media, but you look at what's the sexier story. It's the end of the world as we know it, or COVID sucks, but we're going to get past it. What sells more newspapers?
Right.
The scary headline or the good headline? And again, I absolutely think we should be celebrating these wins rather than looking at them like they're absolutely with a worried eye whenever these things like they cut down the like when they cut down the quarantine time and things like that. You should absolutely take that win, and you should be like, you know what, science is doing its job, and they're finally getting us cut down from 14 days off of work. Now we only have 5.
Right.
I only lose a week's pay.
But
I mean,
on
I
that
know
flip
it's
side,
still
I'd
a
like
big
to look
deal,
and
but
see. On that flip side, I'd like to look and see what it is that made them choose. Like, why did we start off at 14 days and now we're down to 5? Is that because there's been so many vaccines out? Is it because they're seeing lesser symptoms? What was it that made that qualification?
very good point. I would like to see that information because it's a very good point. I think we started with 14 because you weren't sure when you were going to develop symptoms at the beginning between the 14 days, the initial infection and the 14 days. We weren't sure when. Now I think we're kind of finally zeroing in on, okay, you should start seeing symptoms at this point. This is the point where you're going to be infectious. This is the point where infections potentially start going down. Definitely something to keep your eye on. Cynthia says shortages. I'm not sure exactly what she means by that, but definitely, with the onset of more tests out there, are we going to see surges? Yes, because now there's more tests. They're more widely available. They're free in most cases, which is something that I think was absolutely asinine that they weren't free to begin with. But again, I think we need to pivot from putting all of our time and all of our money and resources in trying to eradicate COVID with this vaccine. And we need to go ahead and put it into actually going and moving forward with helping these people, who actually do have COVID. Cynthia says, why are they lowering the quarantine time? Because we are so low on worker shortages. That very well could be, but I don't know that the CDC
I don't
gives a damn about shortages. And
I don't think they're going to throw sick people knowing that they're going to infect other people into the workflow just because there are worker shortages.
Yeah, we're going to see even more worker shortages if we see that something like that. And speaking of throwing people into the workforce, I don't have a video on this topic, but COVID and employment here in 2022. So I told you guys aren't going to like my take on this, and I'm going to specifically talk about one company, Carhartt. A lot of people are up in arms about Carhartt because they have a vaccine mandate. Now, while I may not agree with the vaccine mandate, Carhartt is a privately owned institution, and they get to make these decisions based upon the people that they employ. They own the business. It's their job to do this. They can do with it whatever they want. If they want to tell you that you can't wipe your ass with their toilet paper on company time, guess what? You can't wipe your ass with their toilet paper on company time. I have no problem with Carhartt instituting a mandate in this case.
But let's look at who the customer base of Carhartt is.
Mm-hmm.
And most Carhartt wearers, I guess I should say, are, your farmers, your construction workers, people that are outside all day. And with that type of customer base, you have a lot of that political agenda behind that customer base that identifies with the fact that, no, mandates shouldn't be allowed. I'm a working person, and so that's the way they look at it. I support Carhartt, but I don't support them doing vaccine mandates, so I'm no longer going to support that business.
Oh, they don't even support Carhartt anymore. If you scroll through TikTok, you got people burning their shit all of a sudden. Like, bro, that costs like $120, that pair of Carhartt overalls you're burning. Go ahead and bring them on over to my house. Okay. I'm just saying. I don't care. Honestly, though, my problem with a vaccine mandate stemmed from the federal government trying to enforce it. I have no problem with an owner of a business coming and saying, you know what, here's how my business is going to operate. Because guess what? They make those decisions every single day. There's a company, there's a call center here in Sherwood where literally you are given 60 minutes per week to go use the restroom or anything. Like once you use those 60 minutes, you better make sure you make it to break or you're going to piss yourself in your chair. And that, like, it goes to pregnant women and all sorts of stuff. But guess what? They can do that because they're a private company. They're not controlled by the federal government or any of that. That's why they can do that type of thing. I have no problem with this. It's just business as usual for me. Manny, what do you think about Carhartt? Do you have any problem with them having a vaccine mandate?
As far as Carhartt goes, you're right. They are a privately owned company. They have the ability to make whatever stipulations on their work that they want.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem with any company that will discriminate against anybody for any reason. I don't care what it is. The problem, like you said, starts with the government when they started trying to throw these mandates out.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal belief is if the government is going to stop you from making money, then the government needs to pay your bills.
Well, I mean, if you're Joe Biden, you're singing his damn praises right now because Joe would love to pay everybody's bills, apparently. We have an endless flow of cash in Washington, D.C., according to Democrats.
Because I've told my boss the same thing, that if you're going to be closed for certain holidays and not allow people to work, then you need to pay those holidays.
Agreed. I would agree there. My question then would become, you kind of differentiated the two. You said you have no problem with Carhartt making it, but you have a problem with them discriminating against these employees. If you can kind of explain that a little bit better to me, because I'm misunderstanding where you don't have the problem and where you do have the problem. Because if they have a mandate, then they're gonna discriminate against the unvaccinated.
Right. My problem isn't with the company making rules saying you have to fit this criteria. My problem is with the criteria even being there to begin with, which, like I said, begins with where the government started with the mandates. I recognize that they are a private entity and they can make whichever rules they want. Mm-hmm. But that also lets me know that's not a company that I want to support, nor is it a company I want to work for.
So you don't want to support them. Again, I'm just trying to understand. You don't want to support them, but you have no problem with them making a vaccine mandate. So
I have no problem with them making the rules that they want to make for their job. Okay, this is the United States. Right. We do have a constitution that affords us all this rights. I don't have a problem with them making rules for who can be in their club. I don't, if the white supremacist people want to only bring in white people, that's their club. That don't mean that I support them or agree with them.
Right. Okay.
I'm saying that they are their own entity and they can make their own rules.
Right. You just don't, you don't agree with it. You acknowledge that they have the ability to make that decision. Right. Okay. Now I'm tracking with you a little bit. And I can definitely see that point. But these people that are like, oh, Carhartt is abusing their employees. I'm going to burn all of my shit from Carhartt and all of it. Like, bro, at the end of the day, if these people have a problem, again, just like anybody else, if you have a shitty job and you don't enjoy the people you work for, go find a new one.
Right.
It's not hard.
It's hard right now.
The good news from a firing due to all this is they get to collect unemployment for a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, probably more than a little bit. I don't know if that 6 months is still going on with the extra pay and all of that shit. I don't know if that's still going on because I never took advantage of it.
I don't know. They're still talking about stimulus checks going out.
I saw that, but I could never find anything. Go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure they ended all the bonuses, at least for us in Arkansas, a while ago.
Okay, maybe they did. I'm not sure. But my thing, these people, like, I mean, Manny, you say you don't support what they're doing, but you acknowledge that they can. does that mean you're going to be one of the next people I see on my timeline burning Carhartt shit that you paid $150 for, a jacket or a pair of coveralls?
Oh, that's cute that you think I can afford a $150 pair of coveralls.
Right?
Shoot,
True.
man. I'm on the Walmart, what is that, walls?
Yeah, right. Like, people don't understand. That's a lot of money, bro. Like, go ahead and talk your shit about them, but bro,
I'm not buying Carhartt, man. I got like Walmart or Walhart.
I will say, Walhart. That's hilarious. I will say that Carhartt makes the best jacket I own because I absolutely love them some bitches. You can get them damn things dirty and wash them, and there ain't no issue with them damn things. I love those things. Oh, Lord, he's going to get his Walharts.
No, the best jacket I own is Steel Guard.
Steel Guard, okay.
Exclusively Aramark. When I worked at a different company here in Hot Springs,
looks like the same material, honestly.
They got us those jackets, and that has been the best coat that I have ever had.
Literally, it looks like the same material too. Like you can get that sumbitch dirty, throw it in the wash, and not worry about it.
So it's one of the Aramark, which is a company that does uniforms.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. Well, again, I'm not gonna. I have a hesitancy to bash people for making a decision. Again, we talked about, you brought up the WWE a couple weeks ago and their decisions to make a bunch of mass layoffs. While the internet wrestling community was up in arms about how the WWE made these decisions to cut these people's employment, it's business. Go about your life. I'm not gonna bash them for making a business decision that they feel is in the best need for in the best interest of their company. That's just my thing. Rich, you got it, or Matt Hawk, you got anything else on this one?
No, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with y'all on that. I mean, it's kind of comical to me, like the people go out burning this stuff because you're not doing anything except destroying your own stuff. The company already made their money off you.
Yeah.
Right. That shit's still sitting in their bank account and they ain't doing nothing with it. I'm just saying. Okay, y'all. Let's go ahead and move on to this next one. It's been a while since we've talked about the police on this show, shockingly. But police and the police, and I have not seen this video yet. I intentionally have not seen this video yet. But the question is a Florida sergeant deserving of the punishment that he received? I'm going into this blind. So we have a story from NBC6 South Florida on this.
Sunrise police are investigating one of their own after shocking body camera footage showed an altercation between a sergeant and another officer. NBC6 investigator Willard Shepard joins us with that video and what we know so far. Hey, Willard.
Well, there is an investigation underway here, and the chief, Anthony Rosa, taking action here to let the community know what's going on here, but also shows how some of this process that they have been doing to train officers to step in, even concerning with one of their own, if that becomes necessary. We want to show you this video here. I found out this morning this actually took place back in November when the officers here in Sunrise were taking a felon into custody and had that person into custody. There is a sergeant that is seen in the video that pulled out a can of pepper spray, never actually deployed it, but at that moment a second officer stepped in, taking that sergeant by the back of his belt and was moving him backwards when the video shows that sergeant turned around and put his hands on the throat of the officer who had moved over into that situation. That sergeant has been removed from all of the supervisory capabilities that the sergeant has had here at the police department in Sunrise, and there's an internal affairs investigation underway. The police chief chose to release this video to us and to the public in terms of transparency. That's something the chief doesn't even actually have to do here because he's protected by the Florida law in not releasing it because an internal affairs investigation is underway. But the chief in his statement said that they wanted complete transparency with this. This investigation now moves forward. The chief also commended the officer who stepped in because that officer wanted to take action to de-escalate the situation and thought things were going to escalate. And police and law enforcement across the board have been saying, especially after George Floyd, officers have to step in when they see something that they think that they can prevent that's going wrong, even if it's another officer. And that's what the chief believes was taking place here. Of course, the investigation will continue and move forward. We'll have much more throughout the course of the day on this situation here in Sunrise. In Sunrise, Willard Shepard, NBC6
News. Really?
What you didn't get to see was that the subject or the suspect had already been handcuffed and placed in the car. When the sergeant pulled the pepper spray canister like he was going to use it. And that's why the other officer grabbed him by the belt to pull him back, because the guy was already subdued and in the vehicle.
The question is the Florida sergeant deserving of the punishment? Why is the Florida sergeant still employed?
That's a good question. Why hasn't he been brought up on assault charges for grabbing somebody's neck?
We're not even talking, like, I'm not even getting into the fact that it's a female officer. Like, you just put your hands on another human being. That is assault and unacceptable. Like, do I think that just looking at the video, and I can't tell much, I can't hear anything or anything, but it doesn't look like he's actively, like, choking her. It looks like he's got his hand there and he's pushing her back. But still unacceptable. Unacceptable. That is assault, and this guy needs to be in jail right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Like,
but you have to see where trends are starting to change. Before that kind of stuff would have never happened, as far as another officer stopping a senior officer. I think they'd said she had been on the force for a couple of months.
Really?
So you're looking at a very new officer questioning a senior officer, and that's good to see.
Absolutely. And she didn't do it. She could see the situation escalating, and all she did, if I understood correctly, was she put her fingers in his belt loop and tried to pull him back.
Right.
Like, she didn't even stop this shit. Like, all she did was try to pull him back. And he turned around like that. Like, wow, this guy, Matt Hawk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of instances where, like we were talking about politicians, we need a changing of the guard in the police service.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's going to take a while. We're still going to see shit like this happen for a while. But I will say this, again, just like we talked about, celebrate your wins with COVID. Celebrate this win. Like, this woman stepped up and questioned her officer to a point where, we still don't know that. We don't know how that department handles that kind of shit. So good on her.
But I mean, that department's chief is the one that put this video out. So you've got to assume that this department is taking the necessary steps to show that they're not going to stand for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, he commended her in public. He said he wanted to be transparent. The only thing, I know justice doesn't work quick, and they still said that there's an internal investigation going on. We're 2 months in. I definitely believe that we will see this guy lose his job. Do I really think that we're still do I think we'll see anything past that? Probably not. That's not me. That's just me being a pessimist, because, a lot of people would probably believe that losing your job is going to be enough. But the way this guy's acting, it very well could end in charges, and that's the way I think it should end. That guy should absolutely not only lose his way of life or his job, he should also lose some freedom for quite some time.
Yeah, he definitely does not need to be on the force anymore.
Oh no, absolutely not. And I can't say it enough. I definitely commend that officer for trying to step in and intervene. I mean, good Lord, she was definitely outweighed by a good 100 pounds.
But I mean, like you said, again,
2 boxes of donuts.
Right.
Go ahead. Like you said, I was going to just say I applaud her in stepping up. I mean, a lot of people, especially in that position, when it comes to correcting a senior, official or a senior officer, somebody that's above you, you don't always want to do that. So applaud her certainly for stepping in there and stopping what could have been a worse situation. Really, it's kind of amazing to me to still hear about these stories, especially after everything that happened with George Floyd, because you would think that was a clear message sent out to every police officer out there when Chauvin got convicted that, hey, we're watching you. We're not going to stick up for this anymore. It's not just going to be brushed under the rug. If you do something that assaults a citizen and you're an officer of the law, you're going to get caught. You're going to get found out.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, one of the problems we have, Rich, is that I'm sorry, Mad Hawk, is that
stage name.
One of the problems that we have is that the body cameras can still be muted and turned off.
Right.
So they still have the power to delete evidence.
Right.
So they still think that they can get away with it.
Right.
Well, and another excuse I've heard before, and I feel like we could possibly hear in this case specifically is, oh, well, maybe he was just having a bad day and he was worked up. Shit, you could have an average everyday citizen could have a bad day and fucking shoot somebody. And guess what? They're going to jail for the rest of their life, as they should. But, what makes a police person different? If you commit a crime, police, military, anything, you need to face the penalties. Nobody should be above the law by any stretch of the imagination.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So, Representative Greene, she decided to make a statement on a day. And I don't even agree with the statement, but this is even more so a choose your time. Choose your time. This is not the time. This is like Donald Trump saying that we've made great, George Floyd would be proud of the great strides we've made in race relations in this country. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene literally said that there is there is potential for a new segregation for people who are unvaccinated against the coronavirus. Let that sink in. On Martin Luther King Day, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a representative in the United States of America, said that there is an opportunity for new segregation against the unvaccinated. The color of someone's skin versus getting vaccinated. Something somebody can't control versus a personal decision, whether I agree with it or not.
I'm assuming you don't have the video for this.
I wasn't able to find a video.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you would think that I would have.
No doubt. You think the Democrats, what is it, NBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, you would think that all of them would be on it.
They have a press conference from a couple days later, but they don't have this one.
Wow. And you want to compare skin color, but I mean, that's not what segregation is all about. Segregation isn't just about skin color. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we did just talk about a company that is firing people for not having vaccines.
Okay.
So you can see where there is segregation based on this. The problem I have is bringing this kind of thing up on Martin Luther King's birthday.
Okay, I can definitely see your point here. But again, the reason why I use that, number one, because it's Martin Luther King Day, but number two, something that you can change and something that you actively cannot change. Nobody can change your skin color. So these people that were segregated against in Martin Luther King's time were segregated
Right.
against.
But I mean, you're going to race and color of skin. I mean, you can have segregation based on all kinds of things, including, but not limited to, your sexual preference.
It's Martin Luther King Day. Like, my thing is this: you made that comparison on that day for a reason. That's why I don't think it's a wild jump to compare.
Right, right. She was going for the shock factor. Everybody being in a state of remembering the racial segregation that was going on in the United States. And that's why I'm saying, while I can see where she's coming from, and in some respects, I do agree with what she was saying, the time that she chose to say it was very inappropriate and was really in bad taste.
It absolutely was. Again, I compare it to what Donald Trump even said too, is just timing aspect. Matt Hawk, what do you think about Representative Green making comments about segregation on Martin Luther King Day?
I mean, I kind of want to ask her how the foot tasted in the mouth a little bit, but
I don't think at this point she cares. Like,
yeah,
honestly, like, she knows she's the whipping boy of the Republican Party, or in this case, I guess, whipping person in 2022 terms of the Republican Party. Like, woof.
yeah. I wish there was more I could say, but like he said, like Manic said, it was certainly in poor taste, but yeah.
And I definitely see Manny's point there, as far as saying that there is a potential for segregation there. As the textbook definition, segregation is separating a group of people based upon whatever factor. Like, completely. Segregation still exists in this country. Not everybody has gay marriage. Just like I think you brought up earlier, sexual preference.
Right, your sexual preference. I mean, there was a time when women were pushed to the side, especially in the workforce.
Right. So there's absolutely a multitude of segregation in this country and previously in this country. But, yeah. Whoo! Somebody, Representative Green's press person has got to have a lot of sleepless nights. Like, more so than Donald Trump's. And that's saying something.
All right.
Like, Donnie's press person had to
they did,
but at least he never said nothing like that. Good Lord. Okay. The other cool one, and I actually really think this was cool that you brought up, Manny, was mass extinction. So when you first brought this up, I was looking on YouTube for the video, and of course, there's videos that are like 4 years old talking about this sixth mass extinction. And I wanted something newer, so of course I wasn't able to find something newer. But reading it, finally being able to sit down and read the story after getting off work today, this isn't exactly what I thought it was, but it's still something that's very important. It's talking about, actually, there's 500 land animal species that could be extinct within the next 20 years. And, when we were talking about it earlier in the show, it didn't even dawn on me. Like, that could actually really still affect humans.
Yeah.
Food sources could go away. All sorts of things that, like, you talk about disrupting, not the food chain, but the ecosystem, I guess, would be the best word I can come up with.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem.
the world would change. So mass extinction, while it's not directly affecting us humans, it would indirectly affect us. This is really something interesting, talking about it. Because originally, we live in the time of COVID. So I thought scientists were saying that COVID could potentially wipe out the country or the world, excuse me. But I mean, it's actually really interesting. Scientists, one of the things that they said, scientists estimate that 99% of all living organisms that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct. Holy crap,
Yeah.
that is crazy. 99% of living organisms are, extinct. And here's another one. While this is Earth's sixth mass extinction, they said that it could take up to 285 million years for it to fully take effect. We're talking about the world changing as we know it, even if it doesn't directly affect a human mass extinction. Matt Hawk, I thought this was absolutely fascinating, though, that they were talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's fascinating. So that was news info, though. You were just saying that you said, what they say, 97%?
99% of all living organisms, that have inhabited Earth have died.
Right. I'll have to be right back, but I'll come back with my thoughts in a minute.
Right on. That is crazy to me how much Earth has changed. Like, I never thought that 99% of the, and when you just go to organisms, obviously we're talking about plants, fungi, bacteria, so on and so forth. But still, 99% of anything that has inhabited Earth has become extinct. And, even though I believe in the Bible and so on and so forth, still, even the Bible speaks of the eventual demise of humanity as we speak. Like, right. It's eventually going to happen. It's just a win.
And it's like whenever they were worried about the wolf population in Yellowstone. So they set out to control the wolf population in Yellowstone. And once that was done, I'm reading this, 1926. Once that was done in 1926, within like 30 or 40 years, they had seen how bad it got because those wolves were not there to regulate other things that needed to be regulated.
And that's crazy. And, I think this isn't a far stretch to also bring this up. A lot of people don't understand, Tiger King, for example. Pretty big documentary. Now everybody, just like when Blackfish came out, oh, these zoos and things keeping animals terrible. The SeaWorld keeping animals terrible. Like, yes, SeaWorld, for example, Blackfish, yeah. SeaWorld was doing some pretty shitty stuff. But you look at it, and they still do have their place in the world.
Right.
At their root their root mission, it's to, build back these populations. So this is where I am going to need the PETA people to step off and, say, hey, yeah, okay, if this population is becoming endangered, we need to get two of them some bitches, throw them in a cage, and let them do what they do so that, we can continue to have these populations thrive within the population of the world. I mean, that's my thinking. Is I automatically go to there where people are like, zoos are terrible, animals shouldn't be in captivity. Like, fuck it then. Apparently, we're going to lose all these animals because
right. There are some instances where zoos are actually saving these animals because most of the animals that are in these zoos are rescued out of some situation and could not fend for themselves in the wild anymore.
Right.
So you have to look at it with those goggles on. Now these black markets that will actually go and take animals and sell them on a black market. Yeah, there's stuff that needs to be done there.
Yeah.
But under no circumstances should we actively cheer or want the extinction of an entire species.
Absolutely, because ramifications are felt all the way throughout that food chain where we sit at the top, and guess what? I was eating sushi the other day. I don't want to see any fish population going away
Right.
because that's some good shit. I'm
Right.
just saying. Like, you don't understand if you, again, we talk about Democrats. You look at things in such a small scale. I've got to fix this problem, but I've got to go to the extreme. These
Right.
zoos and everything are, if you shut them down completely, guess what? No more breeding programs. While breeding programs can be abused, and they absolutely are, in SeaWorld's case, Will You SeaWorld, for example, absolutely are abused. They actually do have some use. Orcas are
Right.
still an endangered species, I believe.
I mean, you look at the buffalo population; it got down how far, and now they are kind of making a comeback because of places like zoos and national refuges.
I believe they were down in the hundreds at I want to say not earlier this decade. I want to say like early 2000s. They got down into the hundreds. There was not many left at all for them. So definitely, again, easy speak to show why some of these zoos and breeding programs actually have use. Okay, gentlemen, final topic of the night before we go into our American Idiot of the Week. Did Mike Pence say something about fraud in the election? And you sent this to us, Manny, and I actually found the corresponding video, this one from MSNBC on this.
But before we go to that,
Go ahead.
bison population research reaches its lowest point, around 325 wild bison.
I knew it was down into the hundreds. There was not a lot left at all. Whenever they came through. Looks like Nighthawk may be back. So before we move on, we'll go ahead and get his thoughts on the whole situation.
Go ahead on. I just had a call. Sorry, y'all. We'll get more prepared for this next week.
You're fine. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to this video from MSNBC on Mike Pence.
First of all, I want you to see if you notice a pattern here. I'm going to show you something, and I want to see if see if you can sense some consistency over time here. I'm going to put a date stamp in the corner of the screen so you can see when all of these happened. But see if you can pick up on the pattern among them. Watch.
After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors.
After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors. After ascertainment has been made that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors.
After ascertaining that certificates are regular in form and authentic, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the electors.
After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors.
After ascertainment has been had that certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors. After the ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors.
Notice a theme? It's a script, right? It's always the same. Every 4 years, whoever is acting as the president of the Senate, whoever the vice president is, it comes time every 4 years for them to open up and count all the electoral votes. And it's always the same. I mean, with, one or two little word shifts here and there, it's always the same thing. After ascertaining that the certificates are authentic and correct, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the elector. They say the exact same thing every 4 years. The words shift like a hair or two in either direction, but it's always the same every 4 years. Until this last time. This last time, for the first time ever, it started off just like it always does, but then it careened off in a whole new direction we've never heard before. Watch.
After ascertaining that the certificates are regular in form and authentic, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the electors for each state, beginning with Alabama, which the parliamentarians advise me is the only certificate of vote from that state and purports to be a return from the state and that has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of that state purporting to appoint or ascertain electors.
What was all that at the end? All that stuff that the parliamentarian has advised you, that was all new. As far as we can tell, nothing like that has ever been said at any one of these things. But Mike Pence, when he opened the electoral votes, January 6th last year, he added that whole new bit. The parliamentarian has advised me there's only one document that counts as a certificate of vote from a state, and that certificate, he says, has annexed to it a certificate from an authority of that state. That's all new language that we've never heard before in this context. Vice presidents always say the exact same thing when it comes time for them to announce the Electoral College votes. But when Mike Pence did it, he added this whole new complicated clause saying the parliamentarian had advised him that only one certificate of electors could be counted from any one state. It had to have the explicit blessing of an authority of that state. That was all new. And there's been some minor drama around the Electoral College before in previous elections. But no vice president ever before felt the need to get a parliamentarian's ruling, basically giving him a clear legal way to assert that he doesn't have to count any forged fake set of electors that might have been sent into him alongside the real ones. No vice president has ever before had to get some sort of language from the parliamentarian explaining that if two sets of electors were sent in from a particular state, he was only going to have to count the one. But Mike Pence had to do that, which means Vice President Mike Pence knew in advance of January 6th that Republicans in multiple states had sent in forged fake electoral votes, documents purporting to be the real electoral votes from those states, even though they were not real. We know he knew about it because we can see he had to maneuver in advance of actually conducting the vote count that day to get the parliamentarian to give him that language so he could justify not counting the fake votes. Reporter Kyle Cheney at Politico.com gets credit for catching this and catching it at an auspicious time.
Okay, I'm done because that is the most grasping at straws. Here's my thought process. And mind you, Rachel Maddow, while you're sitting here grasping at straws about Mike Pence, who came out and literally said he does not agree with Donald Trump. He believes that Joe Biden won the presidential election fair and square. Mind you, while you are undermining that man, what do you think? Maybe he said it because he knew there was going to be controversy on the Republican side. So he wanted a little extra spice, a little extra there to say, just in case Republicans tried to claim that these weren't valid. Did you think about that? Or did you just want to find a reason to complain about Mike Pence because he's a Republican? Absolutely asinine and absolutely unacceptable. And I couldn't listen to anymore. Like such a like grasping at something to complain about. This man literally, this time last year, that was your guy. That was your, oh, look, Mike Pence isn't even going with Donald Trump. He's a good guy. He's a good Republican. But now we're going to bash him because, in my honest opinion, I think he said it because he knew that Republicans were going to continue to raise a stink about the legitimacy of the election. So he decided to add a few extra words. I don't know. Manny, we'll start with you.
I don't think those scripts are prepared by them. I think those scripts are prepared by somebody else. That's number one. Number two, I had heard about the ability for electors to be sent in. And if certain electors were sent in for a candidate, whoever got theirs in first was the one that got in.
Okay.
So that may be the case.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been states, and I mean, he obviously brought up Alabama to begin with.
Which Trump won, mind you.
Right. But there may have been some states that other people got together and sent in electors for the electoral vote that weren't necessarily the people's decision. So in those cases, because those other people had gotten theirs in first, technically they're supposed to be counted, but because they knew that they weren't the real electors that were put in the position to actually cast the electoral vote, they had to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I was looking at when I started hearing about this story.
I see your backstory there, but my first question is, do you think Mike Pence said all of that extra stuff just to fucking set up Donald Trump to be able to claim election fraud?
Oh, no.
Like, that is an overreach. Again, if anything, based upon Pence's actions afterwards, saying that Joe Biden is the president of the United States legally elected, I don't believe he was trying to set Donald Trump up for anything to claim election fraud. I think at that point, Mike was probably like, man, I just want to get this shit over with and get back to Indiana. Shit.
Right. And I don't see Donald Trump having anything to do with it. I don't see Mike Pence having anything to do with it. What you have are certain representatives of certain states that were trying to put electoral votes in prematurely.
But Rachel Maddow said that it was clear evidence that he was getting ready to support, like clear.
I know. Like, I was listening to her, and she's like, this proves that he knew about November 6th. Come on now. Come on.
Like,
this proves that it sounds like a bad episode of Adam Ruins Everything.
Maddow ruins everything.
Right, for real. Like, she's sitting there talking, and I'm going, yeah, that's kind of how the electoral process works. A whole bunch of people go and vote, and then one person tells them who won from that state. Like, yeah, I watched that episode. I'm pretty sure that's how the government works. Now, you are right. There are other people that could have, tried to send in their thing prematurely. And hey, even better, then they were already ahead of that and said, no, we need to see some type of for sure certification that says this is indeed from that. I mean, there's FedEx packages that your package that you order from Amazon and UPS and everything, you got to sign off sometimes that you received.
Did it never cross her mind that maybe Mike Pence, being an intelligent human being, a very intelligent gentleman, the former vice president of the United States, had the forethought to think, this is a controversial election. I may want to go a little bit deeper into my explanation of how this is going to work because...
And let's really look at it in that way, too. Everybody expected, and even this next election, I mean, Mike Pence has now been a vice president. They expect at some point he's going to maybe run for president. Right. And in this aspect, he's covering his own ass. He's saying, look, I'm not going to have people come back and say, I didn't certify an election correctly. So here's the result. Here's how it was certified. Here's who certified it. You got a problem with it? Take it up with them. I'm just the person announcing the results.
He literally said like an extra 2 sentences.
Right.
And it's this big deal of, Mike Pence was ready to steal the election for Donald Trump. Like, come on.
Right. So, okay, Rachel, are you the one that types up everything on your teleprompter to give complete bias to the Democrats and liberals then?
Right? Like, that was the most asinine, like Superman would be jealous of the leap that she just made.
I think I'm going to put her down for my American Idiot of the Week with that statement. Seriously.
She's close. I've got to give it to somebody else, which I mean, I guess because we've all gotten our laugh out of this, we can go ahead and move on to our American Idiot of the Week. This week, I've got to keep pace with what I said. We held Donald Trump liable for questioning the legitimacy and how dangerous that was of the 2020 election. We got to go Joe Biden. Joe, you're facing a defeat in November, and it's a midterm election. Every sitting president honestly loses and takes a bath in the midterm election. I don't remember one that didn't. Donald's was less than most. I think Barack got his ass whooped in one of them. I remember that. But most sitting vice presidents get their ass whooped in the midterms. It's just how it works. You get 2 years of basically you controlling everything, and then the country's like, you know what, I'm tired of it. I'm going to give the Democrats or the Republicans one of the chambers, and you guys can hold on to the other. That's just how this works. But the fact that he felt like he had to delegitimize the 2022 election before it even happened, before we even know who the representatives are going to be in a lot of these races, says a lot. And that's why he is my American Idiot of the Week this week. Matt Hawk, we'll go with you.
I'm going to stick with what I just said a minute ago. Rachel Maddow with that whole entire thing. That is definitely my Idiot of the Week.
And y'all, I cut it short. Like, I could only imagine how much longer she went on.
What a reach.
Whew, Manny.
Oh, I'll go with an entire department. Excuse me. The California Department of Social Services. They're my American Idiots of the Week because they decided to bar Tiffany McHugh and strip her of her license to teach because she could not keep her preschoolers. She could not, quote, get the students to keep masks on.
You're lying to me. You're lying.
She lost her license.
Wow.
Because preschoolers wouldn't keep their masks on.
Wow.
44. That's almost like in California. I'll give a bonus American Idiot of the Week. That's almost like in California. The Attorney General said that, I believe it was the Attorney General, said that the parents will not have the authority to turn down a COVID vaccine for their children. I believe 12 and under.
Yeah.
I sent that story earlier this week. Yeah. Try it. Try it. Because I know there's some good old boys in California. I'm just saying.
The government is really trying to step into the middle of all kinds of stuff. And this goes back to what I was saying about if the government stops you from being able to make money, then the government needs to cover your bills.
Exactly. The constitutionality of a lot of what they're doing in California right now is very questionable, to say the least.
Right.
And we'll leave it at that. But that's all we got for this week. Manny, Matt Hawk, you guys got anything else you want to discuss before we get out of here?
Nope.
Right on. Well, we will see you guys next week for another episode of the American Idiots. Good night, everybody.
Later.